All right, folks. It looks like there's a pretty good number of people on the call. So for the sake of time, I think we can just go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for joining today. With us on the call today, we have Bill Hubick and, oh my God, I forgot your name, Jim, because you show up as Bill.
Jim Brighton.
Jim Brighton, thank you. Knew it was Jim. And they are from the Maryland Biodiversity Project, which is, they'll tell you all about it and how they got started. It's not actually a project that is directly affiliated with the state heritage program there, but they've worked closely with them. And they've just done some pretty incredible work over their 10 years in existence and have some really great ideas that we thought might be of interest to folks in the network. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bill and Jim to get started. Just for housekeeping, there's a Q&A and the chat box, so feel free to put questions in there and we'll stop periodically to look at those. There'll be plenty of time at the end for discussion, and if we end up having so much to talk about that we run out of time, we can put that in a parking lot and do some more stuff later on.
And feel free to filter out the heckling from Wes and other Marylanders already in the chat.
Wait, I have a special Wes filter.
Important.
All right.
Cool.
All right, well, take it away, guys.
All right, let me get my screen shared here. All right, is that showing?
It is.
All right, great. So thank you all for joining us today. I would like to thank Misty and NatureServe for allowing Bill and I the chance to present to you all. And I'd also like to say that Bill and I have, I want to thank everybody for coming, but we have really great respect for what NatureServe and the heritage programs do. You guys are on the forefront of conservation, and you're all heroes in our eyes. So today we are going to talk about the Maryland Biodiversity Project. I'm going to do the first part and basically give just an overview and a brief history of the project. And then Bill's gonna talk more about the lessons we've learned during our 11 years now, and how we might be able to help you all as well. So let's get going. The Maryland Biodiversity Project is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are focused on cataloging the living things of Maryland. We promote conservation, science, and education by helping to build a vibrant nature study community. Our main platform is our website, but we also do a lot more, which we will hit on later. So back in June of 2012, Bill and I were in a park north of Annapolis, Maryland, called Severn Run. And we took a picture of this plant. And back then we weren't as well versed in plant identification. And when we got home and tried to identify it, we had some problems, even though now we know it's a pretty common plant. But what we found out was that Maryland didn't have a comprehensive plant checklist. Maryland didn't have any data in the USDA plants website. And that kind of bummed us out. Many of our surrounding states in the Mid-Atlantic had checklists that were easily accessible online. So what we decided is that Marylanders needed a website where they could go and see complete checklists of all the living things in the state. So Bill and I started talking, and within a few months, the Maryland Biodiversity Project was developed and online. One of our first things we wanted to accomplish was we wanted to make checklists where people could go and see as complete a list of species as possible. So in the beginning, we started out with the big five. mammals, birds, herps, butterflies, and odes, dragonflies and damselflies. We knew that we had access to complete checklists for all these things. So this is what we started. We wanted to make our checklist clear and precise and available to everyone. Immediately, we ran into issues. How are we going to deal with taxonomy? You all know that taxonomy is fluid, and we decided we needed to be consistent across the platform. So we decided right off the bat that we were going to follow IDIS for our taxonomic info. We also wanted to make sure that we showed our work. If anybody challenged a checklist or species on the checklist, we wanted to be able to say, yeah, well, we got that species or checklist from here. So whenever we created or a checklist or added a new species, it went into our bibliography. As the checklist started becoming more public, we added many more. Experts started getting in touch with us. Tim Ford, the Maryland ant guy, sent us his list of all the ants that he had found in the state. Sam Droege, the bee guy, sent us all of his bee data. A lot of the entomologists at the Smithsonian reached out. Warren Steiner, Charlie Staines, they all sent us their checklist. Gary Hevel, another Smithsonian entomologist, sent us data of the 7,000 species of insects that he had recorded in his backyard in Tacoma Park. So we were getting inundated by people sending us data, and we spent all of our time generating these checklists. As the checklist became more concrete, we decided to start concentrating on the species pages. And once again, we wanted to have a consistent look across the board. So this is what our species pages look like. You have the name, you have the scientific name and the authorship and the date. Underneath that, you have a basic taxonomic order. And underneath that, you have a county bar chart right here. So if the county is highlighted in green, that means that we have a record from that county. People got kind of confused with the county bar chart, and they pined for a map. So Bill created a map, which is basically just a redundancy of the county bar chart, but in map form. We also developed ways we wanted to have a status, a description, and relationship blocks on the species page. And this way we could share information about the species. We also wanted all of our captions to be the same. So every caption under every photo has the species name, the county, the date the photo was taken, and the photographer. One of the ways we got our photographers to donate photos to us is if you click the photographer's name, it will take you to their own website. So we decided we would want to generate flow to all of our contributors to their websites. We also developed tags. So here's a pepper and salt skipper species page. So you can see in need of conservation, this is the heritage programs, S2 state rare, and it's also on the vulnerable species list. So whenever, say endangered, if it's state endangered, if it's federally endangered, if it's threatened, state threatened, if it's only found in Garrett County, the far western county, or if it's found only in Worcester County, our only coast county, we'll put tags. Also, like non-native and invasive. So all the non-native invasive species have these tags. All of our tags are searchable. So you can click invasive and it will give you a list of a checklist of all the invasive species. So if it was an endangered species and you click the endangered tag, it would give you a list of all the endangered species in the state. It was around this time where Bill and I realized that we needed to really get the public to bite and start sending us data. Building that community was at the forefront. So what we decided, we needed a platform for people to share their data easily with us so we could populate the database. So what we decided on at the time is we would use Flickr, which was a free public, for free, you could sign up and add photos. And we created this Flickr pool for the Maryland Biodiversity Project where you could post the photos in the pool. We would take the photos out of the pool and put them into the database. This worked really well, but we needed to teach the public how to do that. So one of the ways we decided the best way to reach many people at once, we created our Maryland Biodiversity Project Facebook page. And this is how we really reach the community. Whenever we have a big announcement, whenever we want to get a point across, we post it on our daily Facebook pages. So this is from August 5th, 2020. It was when we reached 500,000 records in the database. So we made a big deal about it. But we also use our Facebook page for fundraising and other things like that. So with a little bit of prodding to the public through social media, the Flickr group really kicked off well. Within a couple years, we were so successful, we had over 18,000 photos in the Flickr queue waiting to be uploaded. That is a thing of nightmares. I would lay in bed sweating that there was 18,000 photos waiting for Bill and I to put into the database. You can only imagine how much work it was. We worked for years on that and eventually got it down. In the meantime, Wes Knapp, who was working at Maryland Heritage at the time, reached out and said, hey, I want to start a Maryland Plant Atlas. So Bill and I jumped at the opportunity, and the Maryland Biodiversity Project, along with the University of Maryland's Norton Brown Herbarium and the Department of Natural Resources, the Heritage Program, created the Maryland Plant Atlas. At that first meeting, we decided that we would show all data at the Plant Atlas to quad level. This is really important because the Plant Atlas shares the same database with the Maryland Biodiversity Project. Bill created both. So we decided at MVP, we would also show all of our data only to a granular point to the public of quad level. So here's the quad map for the plantain leaf pussy toes. You can see it's we still have some quads to fill out, but it's also the more purple, the more records we have for that quad. So pink quads have less, more purple have more records. You can also get a count underneath of this. You could see if you were on the species page, you could get an exact count of how many records were in each quad. So this required us to once again reach out to the public because, say, on the Flickr group, somebody posted a photo. Here's a photo of a willet from Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge. That wasn't good enough. We couldn't map that data to quad level because Blackwater is across like 6 quads. So we had to teach the public about quads and how they need to share the data with us so we can populate the database correctly. And it worked pretty well. We used Facebook again, and Bill and I know way more than we should about quad level distributions in the state. So 2019 hit. 2019 was a big year for us. Flickr announced that it was no longer going to be a free platform. So as soon as word got out, we started getting many emails from our power users saying, we're not paying for that. So we had to scramble to find a new data sharing platform. And then the pandemic hit and we all went into lockdown. I remember the phone call that I got from Bill, who said, hey, you need to check out iNaturalist. Go and take a look. I want you to enter a bunch of data, become a power user, get really know it in and out. So I was in lockdown, so I did. I started entering mad numbers of records into iNaturalist and quickly became addicted. What I didn't realize is that Bill was figuring out how to build a new integration platform between iNaturalist and MVP. And within a couple months, we had something developed and it was amazing. It shared, we had all kinds of time now to do cool stuff. So we started awesome morning flight counts in the fall, starting on August 1st through November 30th. We're the first place on the mid-Atlantic other than Cape May to do morning flight counts. Here's Turkey Point was our first place. That's at the tip of the northern tip of the Chesapeake Bay. We also started one at Dan's Rock in Allegheny County, which is at the base of the Allegheny Plateau. All this data you can watch in real time on Trektellan. Here's the Trektellan page from our last day of last year from Turkey Point. Also, you can get full year for the whole season, data for the whole season on Trektellan. And also all the data goes into eBird. We also started helping out the Heritage Program with more things. We doing rare butterfly surveys, helping Chris Fry look at rare plant populations. We're also helping Chris reevaluate a lot of the S3 plant species. We're giving him, sharing a ton of our data, which the Heritage Program didn't have. So as of right now, we have 20,700 species in checklists. Over 13,000 of those species have photographs. We have over 773,000 total photos and over 900,000 records in the MVP database. Of those 900,000 records, we think that 90% of those are point data. 5% can be mapped to county and the other 5% can be mapped to state level. But most importantly, we have a lot of time now to spend with the community, and that's the most important thing, getting out there and sharing what we know with the community. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Bill.
You're on mute, Bill.
Bill, yeah,
Oh.
you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm going to go ahead and share mine now. That was beautiful, Jim. I loved seeing the history that way. Although, if I'm nervous, I'm just going to blame hearing about the 18,000 photos in the Flickr pool. That really was a nightmare. All right, give me a sec to share. I want to start by echoing what Jim said. Thank you so much for this chance to share with you. I'm going to pick up there and talk about how some of the lessons learned we have from that time might apply to helping all of you. For the last several years, we've been out in this area beyond our wildest, most ambitious expectations in the early days, doing targeted data collection to fill in gaps and automating these workflows that are literally 1,000% increase in the data we can handle, but also leveraging global expertise and all these neat new technologies. I'm going to have to go pretty fast, and Jim condensed a lot down. So one thing I want to say at the beginning and end of my talk is we'd love to follow up with any of you and discuss, we're happy to explore what we've done with Maryland Biodiversity Project, and also how the things I'm about to talk about could help you. So please do reach out. A few months ago, we built on discussions that I'd had with Jen Selfridge, who you see here on the right, and others, about how we could do more good in terms of like on the ground conservation and helping the heritage program and so on. So we started getting a call going, me and Jen and Jason McNeese, occasionally pulling in others, just talking about data, what features at MVP could save them some time, what do their workflows look like, how does the data look when it gets here, how does biotics work, what's an EO kind of stuff. And as I got smarter and started trying to create some new tools for them to use, and as we brought other people into the conversation and heard their challenges and ideas and concerns, I started throwing together ideas about, man, I really think there's a way to scale this. And that's what we're going to talk about in this section of the talk. Two major opportunities. So we recommend and want to help you track all biodiversity species. Another way of saying it, do a perpetual atlas of all wild taxa in your area. And to do that primarily by using custom ingestion tools to pull the data out of community science tools like iNaturalist, but others as well, and extract that subset of data that has the quality and other characteristics that you need for your job. Before we get into the why and how of it, I just want to note, we're recommending that we leverage the proven processes and the key players represented here today. We want to use the leading community science tools. We want the member programs to have the opportunity to create those settings, what data, what super research grade variety of data that meets your needs should go into a repository like that. And we think the data should be aggregated at the point of need. So in this case, at NatureServe. We want to make sure it's very clear, we're not trying to compete with any of the processes. We think that we've thought a lot about how to build this model out, and doing what we did in Maryland 50 plus more times doesn't feel right. It scares us that the next one or the fifth one could go sour and change the way people feel about these efforts. The data, unless we were very careful, couldn't be as easily aggregated. So we think there's a way to do it that aligns all of the stakeholders and their incentives, how they'll measure success, and can pull in the data that has value for you from all of the tools. I list on the right iNaturalist, eBird, and GBIF, but this also applies to museum collections and herbaria and special data sets from experts in the community that want to share their legacy. Just a quick note that there are many cases where experts that had priceless decades of information shared with us, and we've permanently archived that priceless data. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The data could be lost if we don't move now. So some quick use cases. I know I don't have to convince this group that biodiversity is important, but what kinds of things are you missing if you don't track everything? The bronze copper is a butterfly that when we started getting into things beyond birds could be easily found on the Eastern Shore. It was localized, but you can find them in the right habitat if you looked for them. Years went by and suddenly we started asking each other, have you seen one? And agreeing they were all but disappeared. MVP was able to share the data we had with the heritage program. So they had a starting place to say, what's going on? Is there something wrong with the host plant? Where are they persisting? Can we look there for hints on what we could do about this? So Exhibit A is you can't have the data tomorrow that you didn't gather, today or before today. The next is the other side of the coin, which is attract species that by leveraging all this data we found was much more common and widespread than expected. In Maryland, the southern tway-blade orchid went from S2 to S4, which means they no longer need to track it as actively, and those resources can be reallocated to higher priorities. So that's a great model of saving time by ensuring you're capturing all this data that might not otherwise go through your channels. A cool one that happened recently was related to eastern box turtle and wood turtle data. There's a Northeastern consortium working on a habitat management strategy across multiple states. And Maryland just completed a very successful herp atlas, but all of the data was archived at the quad level, and they needed sub-quad point data to look at habitat level needs. So we were able to share several thousand precise points with a data sharing agreement and a blessing from POCs at the Heritage Program that they agreed this was an appropriate move. So that's a great example of having the data for something like that, and when you need it. So another huge case for us is the rare but unlisted. The other day, I was going through our final review queue, part of our ingest process, and saw this big poplar moth come in. I thought, boy, I haven't seen a lot of those. So I checked, and we had 17 records for all time. And I thought, how quickly this thing unlisted could go from occasionally seen to just gone, no discussion. And I wondered how many other species that's true for. So that really aligns with this paradigm shift of, can we move beyond just cataloging the rarest species and helping them hold on, and start thinking about trend data, identifying biodiversity hotspots and whole communities that need help, telling a story to get the big policy changes required to conserve whole suites of species. Couldn't help but add other species on the right, just based on recent discussions. Think of bats right before white nose syndrome, and how much you'd want that data when suddenly a species that, or a group of species you weren't worried about are in collapse. The red fish there is called the short big eye. Our friends at the Maryland Coastal Bays program caught one while seining and doing some outreach, and it was our first photo. That's just this week. You go to Wikipedia, it says South Carolina, south to the Caribbean. We see that over and over again when you go to Bug Guide and different places. We don't always have all of the data, right? There's museum collections that aren't digitized, that we haven't ingested, but we all know that's happening. Things are moving around, things are shifting north, and you can't have that baseline data or make decisions based on it if you don't have it, right? So let's look at that bigger picture. In the far bottom right, those are the 15 new species added to MVP just this year, right? We're at nearly 21,000 taxa, and we're still adding species nearly almost every week. And if you can squint down there, one of those species is great kiskadee, a South Texas specialty bird, appeared in Frederick County. It's a weird time, and we need all hands on deck. Finally, I'll end with the common species. Note the quotes. There are huge issues affecting the planet, affecting our region, from habitat loss, pesticide use, invasive and out of balance species. We know things are affecting whole suites of species. We anecdotally talk about the insect apocalypse, and like many of you, I use that example of stopping to clean my windshield on summer nights when I was younger. Something you don't need to do in Maryland in July while out looking for whippoorwills, which you have to look hard for. This is an eBird trend map for chimney swift, and you can see it's in free fall decline throughout its range. And you'll find something similar if you look at all of the aerial insectivores, right? Anything that feeds exclusively on insects is in trouble. This is one piece of the data. We don't need to have the exact insect biomass from 1995 from a plane looking for ballooning spiderlings to tell us it's happening. We know insect biomass is in trouble, but this is only one part of the data. We need this for orchids and beetles, and across the board, we need to be gathering this data. So we talk a lot about keeping the common species common, and we need to note, not just for the obvious inherent value, but we need to do this because it's more cost effective. It's going to be a lot cheaper to move the needle on having purple martins and eastern meadowlarks today than when they're critically endangered, a thing I don't really want to ever have to grapple with. So how are we going to do this? The more I talk to our friends in the Heritage Program and elsewhere, the more I know everybody's resource constrained. So how do we entertain working with a whole lot more data when you're already overburdened and challenged with resource constraints, manual workflows, and so on? So, but at the same time, we know that there's this valuable data there. There's more we could do if only we could get at it and use it. So we're going to talk now about how we think we can do that. And everything we're talking about, we at Maryland Biodiversity Project have been doing for 3 years now. And I talked to leads at iNaturalist just last night to make sure this aligns with their strategy and interests. We think there are ways to automate the flow of the right data to your efforts to allow you to get that view efficiently and without everybody reinventing the wheel and creating these islands of goodness that don't readily allow sharing the data and doing these roll-up views of the data. And the way to do that, I feel strongly, and we've done it once for Maryland, we think we could do it again better for you, is to create custom ingest tools that pull from the APIs of community science tools like iNaturalist. An API is just that interface to ask questions of the database and say, give me the monarch data for Delaware for the last 6 months, or anything that you can describe. What we picture is creating a wizard-style configuration that walks the member programs through what are your data quality needs? What needs to be true for you to trust this data and extract the subset that is useful, that has conservation value to you? When we fill that out, and we could do it, we could help you, we'd create both the ingesters and the forms if there was a mechanism to do this. And behind the scenes, there would be a configuration file like you see in green. That could be used to ask the right questions and pull the data continuously from iNaturalist. And we could do the same for other tools beyond that. What questions would you want to answer in a form like that? We've found that everything we've wanted to do to get the exact right data, we've been able to do. So we could talk in detail. We're going fast in part, so we have lots of time for Q&A, but just touching on some of the important ones. Do you want to exclude captive and cultivated material? Yes. What other quality flags? ID issue, location issue, a variety of flags tell you there's something questionable. Maybe you want to exclude large accuracy radii. If someone puts the dot in the middle of Blackwater with a 10,000 meter radius, that doesn't really have any value to you. And you'll find as you explore, a lot of these do have 2 meter, 4 meter, very precise locations where you can see the dots around the specific habitat, the fields or the edge of the bog. Do you want to use a custom expert list like we do? We don't use research grade by default. You have to, the siting has to have a known authority in that space. Click agree or add the identification. Maybe you want a custom observer list who've completed your training and signed the appropriate paperwork to work in this space. But really, if you could describe it, I'm pretty sure we can add it, and probably are doing it today. Finally, here's some other things that are relevant that we're doing today that I think are really cool and should be open season for Q&A or future discussions. We have what I believe is the best solution for extracting obscured observations in iNaturalist. both the manually by the person and automatically by the state level, the taxon geoprivacy. We can get into that. We have live updates based on relevant changes. So if the ID or location changes, we see that and re-ingest. We can talk about our exact policy there, but it's so powerful. Maryland's lucky enough to have an amazing set of moth expertise, moth experts, and we'll wake up in the morning and they'll have completely redone some micromoth genus, and we'll have an email, add this species based on this publication, merge these two, and we're good to go. And in 5 minutes, we're in sync with the publication released the next day. It's amazing. Contrast that to museum collections not re-annotated in 100 years, or publications with records before all the splits and things that are well known today. We also have appropriate handling of usage permissions at the observation and media level. We have support for undescribed taxa and have over 30 that we track in Maryland today. Jim talked a little bit about tags, but we support them both at the taxon level as well as the individual observation level. So we're capturing both on ingest from iNaturalist as well as during our processing things like phenology, flowering, fruiting, adults, larvae, and more of our tools allow you to filter that way. Show me only silkworm moth larvae. Show me, filter the seasonality chart by flowering. So these are a lot of things we've solved and would like to help you not have to reinvent many times. If you have the resources at all, we'd love to work with you on these. So our recommendation, first, we're open to any ideas at all about how we can help. Again, we're not creating a competing product. We've made something we're proud of. We're going to continue to maintain, but we'd love to expand beyond if there are efforts, if this rings true to you and you want to try to do something. Our favorite idea is a funded pilot with the region that wants to try this, and with NatureServe to put the data in the right place. You know, in addition to extracting it, we can talk about tooling to readily transform observation data into EOs and so on. So we're really open to any version of any of this and are happy to schedule follow-on sessions, both for these ideas, variants of these ideas, or just to delve into MVP stuff. My closing thought as I wrap up my time is just, we're really in this because we care about it. Jim and I alone have hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours poured into this. We've done it as a grassroots community. We have amazing admins and editors that help us now. But we did this without any resources in the early days. Now our operating costs are covered by amazing donors and help fund these other projects. But we want to do this because we believe this will help North American conservation. This will really allow us to do more good if we take on these targets. Finally, very last thought, however we engage with any of you, we will look to align with incentives across all of the stakeholders in this space. We don't want to step on toes. We don't want everybody duplicating efforts. So when we talked with iNat yesterday, we assured them we would keep in close touch, talk about, you know, what the pilots look like, how we can align benefits on their side. You know, if we have buy-in from heritage programs, they'll have more seasoned experts identifying species in more areas and so on. So we'll be very conscientious about how we work with all of you, regardless of next steps. So thank you so much for your time, and we have lots of time for Q&A. So over to you, Misty. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love seeing there's definitely lots of comments. People are really excited about it, which was pretty much my response when I looked farther into it too. Let's see, we'll start with a couple of questions. Elizabeth had one about integrating the platforms and vetting things beyond just the level of research grade, which we all know is not necessarily what we would consider research grade. So if you could just touch a little bit on recommendations for how you guys, your approach to your vetted user or identifier list, that would be
Sure.
great.
Want me to grab that one?
So
Oh, good, Jim.
real quick, and then you can expound. We decided early on that we were not going to allow the research grade tag at iNaturalist to have any bearing on what we ingested from the platform. So, I'll let Bill expound more on, basically what he wrote there in that one slide. We can put all different kinds of parameters on a record to have it ingested or not. And Bill, if you want to go on from there.
Well, one of the things we're often told we got right was getting the buy-in from experts in the community, all of the stakeholders, and we kept our quality high from the get-go. So at the risk of excluding something, Jim and I have been extremely careful. We're not, like everyone, we're not experts on everything. So we needed to rely on experts. So it was very natural for us to say, we're going to create a custom expert list. And if they have an ID on a taxon on iNat, we ingest it. And that's way better than saying, please, snail expert, go to our Flickr page. There's 18,000 photos. And I think there's some snails in there. Got a few hours to ID a blurry photo.
So we just added a new expert today. I think John McDonald, who's a amphipod guy. So
we do it regularly.
He's one of the leading authorities on amphipods,
and a few
obviously
other taxa.
Yeah, Bill and I know nothing about terrestrial amphipods. So we rely on those people.
And I'll just end with, I'm pretty confident, I'm a software engineer in my day job, and extracting data from APIs, transforming it as you need it and putting it somewhere is our bread and butter. So if there's an appetite to get the right subset of any data at a place, that's something I do every day, and I'm very interested in helping you all do. So at this point, there's nothing we've wanted to do with any of the big data sets that we couldn't do. So, and we think you, as the stewards of your region, the state, province, et cetera, should be the ones who decide on those rules. So, yes.
Great,
please.
thanks. Yeah, another sort of in the weeds technical question. George is asking to elaborate a bit on how you're accessing those taxon geoprivacy and other auto-obscured data. You don't necessarily need to share the code, but there's some tech folks on the phone that.
No, it's a big one. That's the first thing people usually talk about when we engage with other states' heritage programs and so on. There's lots of ways to do it, and obviously we, have always followed the guidelines by iNaturalist or the tools we're talking about. None of these are workarounds, right? They're all by the books. One of the things you have to ask when you're doing this is, what's the least amount of effort, right? So there are a variety of ways, and we could save it for a follow-on session to explore the different types of projects, collection, traditional umbrella projects at iNaturalist. But every solution involves someone doing something for every observation, which is a drag, right? So even if you say, I made this project, it's called My State's Heritage Program, it's really great, look at the wiki page, will you go through the steps to share with us? And they say, sure, of course I'll share with you, what a great effort. somebody still has to move that observation to that project, right? So our solution is the ingester has to run as a human. So it runs as me. I have a wiki page that explains, I'm not looking at your data. It's going in, here's how we protect the data, and here are the cases we use it. And then they share with me, and then the ingester gets it. So it's a one-time request, and I would say 90% of people agree to it. If it's 80%, I just have to like message them directly because they don't see the comments, right? But it's wonderful because it's a one-time thing, and then all of their box turtles and harriers and things that they don't think are rare come in with the coordinates. But there are other ways we could talk about as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so just a few questions about like, how do we get in touch? How do we connect? And I think I would like, from the NatureServe and network relations perspective, I mean, of course, anybody is welcome to reach out to you guys directly.
Please.
I would love to gauge interest, sort of take a pulse check on the network. So if anybody is on this call and is interested in pursuing this, if you could send me an email, I would love to use this as an opportunity to sort of jumpstart the network community science work group that was going for a while, a few years ago. But this seems like just a really fantastic opportunity to see where there's interest and how we might be able to join forces, and, you know, figure out what NatureServe has capacity to do. Are there, you know, just what everybody's capacity is, because I know you guys, Bill and Jim, both have day jobs. So I'm sure there's I think somebody asked, you know, sort of what's the ballpark that you would be envisioning for, you know, a couple of hours conversation one night versus a fully funded project that can help people be thinking about where their budgets are.
You know, I'd rather do that in a follow-up just because it's such a wild delta. We're happy to do a lot of meetings, to be on a working group, but you know, realistically, we're kind of hard out of volunteer hours. So somehow, whether it's justifying to our spouses that we're making travel money for next year, or making a career change because it's all hands on deck to save the planet, we're happy to talk, you know, but there's just too many models to, I think, go into it here. And it's funny talking about money, right? Because any sum is like pocket change in one circle and $1 billion in the next, right? So we'll work with everybody who's interested to figure out something, if assuming anyone has interest.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's see, scrolling through the chat here. Lots of positive feedback. People are excited about it. Devin asks if you're ingesting data from other sources like biotics and online specimen databases. I'm assuming that you do that periodically and keep it updated. Yeah. Is that you just have a schedule?
We still use the Flickr pool. That's still an option. Not everybody enjoys iNaturalist. Bill has created tools. We have ingested the Norton Brown herbarium data and the Smithsonian herbarium data for Maryland data. And Bill can go into more detail about that. Those
are good examples. Just add, we have a bunch of people who have mined published papers.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think actually is worth a quick moment is, who wants to be the one database to rule them all? You know, one of the things is iNaturalist does not want to be GBIF. I verified that they don't want to be the great aggregator. They do.
That's really important to realize.
You know, there's GBIF and there's aggregating the subset of things you want, right? So not everything's going to go to GBIF. I mean, maybe that's an option, as we all agree. If it's not in GBIF, it doesn't count. But I think everyone should embrace we can create tools to get the stuff that's valuable to us from all of them and aggregate what you need. So that's, there's a longer list, but basically if it's structured data, we can ingest it, and we have a lot of ways we've proven it out. So we don't pull from biotics today. We have no hooks into it, but we do link to a variety, dynamic links to Explore pages and so on. So we are trying to drive folks to the resources provided by NatureServe and heritage programs.
Yeah, and just to expound on that just a little bit, on almost all of our species pages, as Bill just mentioned, we have links. So like on every moth page, we have a link to that species page at Moth Photographers Group. For plants, if there's an FNA page, we have that linked. Cernak Herbarium, Norton Brown Herbarium links, so we and Explore, I think we have for most species, right, Bill? That's
there's a variety more, but yeah, if anyone has recommendations to add, we could do that or talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I see one from Bryce. Can I do that one?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Tell us more about how you curate your list of experts. First, I'll say quietly, this is the most people. We've just dramatically increased the number of people who even know we have that. So step one is discreetly to avoid hurt feelings, right? Because everybody thinks they should be an expert, of course. So aside from the philosophical side of how you manage the comms about it, it's subjective, but Jim and I have been doing this for years and curate it at great pain, talk about it, review things. We've had to take away that status due to being a world authority in your area of expertise, but casual outside of it, approving things regardless of cultivated status, right? So every trillium in Baltimore City flows into the database one day that's in someone's garden, and things like that. So we tune it a lot, and we try to base it so that if we did show our cards on it, it would be a strong case, right? They're not just, well, if you're our friend, it's, are you a noted authority that no one has challenged? And that goes with our live updating. If people disagree on an ID, we accept the last ID. So we've never had a case where we ended with our experts in permanent disagreement. Knock on wood, for sure, it'll happen.
Yeah, it does happen every once in a while, but
yeah. So, but programmatically, we can do anything we want. We're happy to, whether it's making a new thing or just brainstorming on if there are ways we could do things better. Happy to talk more about that, Bryce.
Great, and I feel like that's one of the opportunities where working together as the network could really be advantageous, where experts may be residing and living in a state, but have expertise that applies much more broadly geographically. And so sharing those expert lists within the network, I mean, I see a lot of opportunities to, where this could feed into a much larger effort. There was a question from Jocelyn, and I think this really gets at, sort of is there really one database to rule them all? And she asked, I'm thinking a lot about how ingesting existing data sources might confuse users about our value. Do users potentially lose trust in our data quality if we're not careful? So like, how do we, why do users come to heritage programs instead of other biodiversity programs? And how do you see yourself as a data resource? And I think that's a conversation we should be having.
No, it's a great one.
Sure.
Well, I think the big thing is you show your work, right? So at the very least, just as a starting offer, there's many ways one might do this, but create a wiki page that explains there's this treasure trove of data out there that we need to mine. We have custom filters to extract the subset of data with sufficient value to our efforts, and leave it at that, short and sweet. And I think it's a great question, not taking anything away from that question, but I think it's a bigger tragedy to leave all this data on the table due to those concerns. So we have to consider both sides there.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. My take on it has always been that the intention behind natural heritage work was to be all-inclusive. The realities of funding and capacity and limitations has narrowed that focus, to what are the most important things to be getting out there and getting documented and protected. But you're absolutely right that there's this whole realm that's not getting the attention that it needs. And, I've been talking a lot with some folks about fungi, and we all know how critically important that is for ecosystem health and everything. And it's just not on anybody's radar.
If I may, and it goes beyond that. I mean, the health of soil, we're not even like conversational in the impacts of what might be, the very base of biodiversity health, and what are the effects on like soil communities from a couple decades of pesticide use. We need to ramp up all of these efforts. And I think this creates a context where we could create more jobs, more taxonomists, more specialized surveys, because as a continental effort, as a state effort, we see these gaps and we're like, somebody needs to get some soil baseline data into this, and somebody needs to do fungi. And now you have a structure that allows those conversations, right? Where now it's like everybody's just getting by so slammed that with, the subset of things we've agreed we must track, that there's little appetite to random, spot pick outside of that, where if you change the whole paradigm, now there's a structure that, well, we should add that, we should fill in this gap. So getting close. Yep. Which one do you want to close out on, Misty?
I think I just want to comment a little bit back to Jocelyn. And my take on it is that by joining forces, you are acknowledging the unique value that each brings, so that you have this tiered, okay, you're looking for common stuff, let's put this in there. And this also feeds into these, the state heritage programs that are really focusing on the most urgent conservation needs, so that you work together to create the resources based on what the end user's need is, and being more clear about what that means, what those purposes are. So
that was one of our big takeaways in the iNat discussion yesterday, is let's start with what we need to do, right? Everything only makes sense. What are we trying to do? And then work from there on the requirements. Yeah, it's very well said, Misty.
Let's see, just a couple more. Start shelf. Yep, exactly. Having this kind of structure frees up heritage programs to work on more research, as opposed to, like, what do you do with the common stuff? Okay, it's out there. Here's this placeholder. It's at least something that you can work from.
Yeah, as Jim said, that was the effect on us. Not spending our time manually processing Flickr images changed everything.
Right.
Yep. And Wes has a big comment about trends, and you don't know if something's going down if you don't have a baseline to start from, or even when to know to start tracking it.
Like that was a tremendous inspiration for us to start thinking this way. Thank you, Wes.
One of the things that I like to point out when I give MVP presentations about how to glean information from the website is I always ask the audience to tell me how many of certain groups of species are found in the state. So if I'll say how many bees are found in Maryland, and it's always like 20. And when I say, no, it's like 440 species, I go through a whole list of things, and I want them to get the, image in their head that how do we know what we're losing if we don't know what we have, right? It's super important. It's something that we don't think about that much, but like Bill said, and Misty, you as well, having that baseline data is so important, because if we don't know, if we don't have the baseline data, we don't know really what's going on in the bigger picture.
Yeah. Very well said.
All right, so I just put my email in the chat. And hope folks will reach out to me. Bill and Jim, if you hear from anybody, we'd love to at least keep tabs on who's reaching out. The more I think we can be coordinated about this, the more efficient we'll be in making something happen. I definitely feel like there's a path forward here. And
Misty,
I'm
can you reply all to everybody with the slides and our email addresses?
Yep, I will do that.
Yeah.
This recording we'll post it to our private YouTube channel, so that I'll share that link out in case folks missed it. And yeah, I would love to get a call on the calendar here sometime in the coming weeks to move this forward in whatever incremental way we can.
We'd love that. And let me close the way Jim started. Thank you all. You guys really are heroes, and we'd love to help any way we can.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody for joining. I don't have a call lined up for May yet, but stay tuned. I'll be putting something together here shortly. And thank you so much, Bill and Jim, not only for joining us today, but for the awesome work that you're doing. It's really inspiring.
Thank you guys.
Really appreciate it, Misty.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.